Hello, and welcome back to the Scouting for Growth podcast. I'm Sabine VdL. And today I have the pleasure to welcome Sara Mikulski, CIO of Kingstone, and we will talk about one source of truth, zero excuses. Why? Because in insurance claims, single source data isn't just tidy, it is decisive. Sara has been busy modernizing Kingstone's core systems and claims ecosystems to be cloud ready, AI ready, and impact ready, and the timing could not be better. Industry signals are flashing. Up to $170 billion in premiums could walk out of the door by 2027 if claims experiences disappoint. Translation: experience is revenue. The productivity upside is real. In the UK, Aviva deployed 80 plus AI models across claims, cutting liability assessment time by 23 days, lowering complaints 65% and saving £60 million in 2024. That is not hype, that is a P&L. And in the United States, Allstate now has AI drafting most of the 50,000 claims emails its reps send daily. Humans verify, customers get clearer, more empathetic updates. Customers are noticing operational speed too. Average auto repair claims and cycle times fell to 18.9 days in the late 2024. Still challenging, but moving in the right direction, we have to admit. Meanwhile, insurer sentiment toward Gen AI keeps climbing. Production adopters focus 69% of use cases on employee productivity. Nearly half of P&C carriers already run cloud for analytics, both critical to faster, cleaner claims decision and quicker settlements. So today we will unpack how Sara and Kingstone are making one source of truth practical. Architectural choices, vendor picks, human in the loop guardrails, and the KPIs that actually move the combined ratio. If you lead claims, tech, or data, you want less swivel chairs and more straight through. And this one is therefore for you. Sara, welcome to Scouting for Growth. I cannot wait to dive into what is the moment in your career that convinced you that the claims ecosystem could be rebuilt around a single trusted data spine. Welcome. Hi, Sara.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. So good to have you on Scouting for Growth. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, we met over a year ago, and I was so impressed and inspired with this fireside chat we had on stage at Reuters. And so I would like everybody to get to know you and really understand the transformation you were able to do at Kingstone. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
So my first question, let's go into background. Sara, where was or what was the moment, right? Was it a book? Was it a boss? Was it a beautiful mess that nudged you from general technology, IT, to join our industry and lead technology, in Kingstone?
Yeah.
A really well-known New York insurer.
Yeah, great question. Because I feel like we all have that kind of moment that defines whether or not like we head in a certain direction or do something. And I mean, for me, it was, I started my career with a huge focus on making sure that I had like great technical ability, right? I was an awesome troubleshooter. I was the person who took the best notes. That attention to detail was really important, making sure customers felt, happy when they interacted with me, even though they were having problems. And then realizing later on when I became a manager, when I became a leader, that I could then take that same skill set and take it to the next level and start developing people in their careers and, teaching them all the wonderful things that I had learned and the hard lessons that I had learned along the way. So, it's been probably about 4 or 5 years now where for me, the transition was, I'm not just good technically, I'm now, I'm interested in that. Exactly. Right. Taking that next step and really focusing on, an entire organization, seeing it from the top down, and then how to holistically change across departments and across an organization. And so that, really just pushed me to focus on growing my career and becoming who I am today. So yeah.
Well, congratulations. And I know from, speaking with you on stage that, Kingston has gone through a major modernization, and I would say what we call in our industry, digital transformation.
Yes.
So let's talk about fixing it
Yeah.
to be future ready, right? So when
Yeah.
you first landed at Kingstone, what did success look like for you, right? And what did you decide not to do?
Yeah. So back then, which feels like forever ago, but it was also yesterday. It was how do I stabilize, right? How do I just get to a point where we all understand what's happening in which system, where the data is, and then just make it work. That was not the long-term scalable solution, but I came into the organization at a time where disruption would have been not worth it, right? They weren't ready yet in a lot of ways. And the teams were really just like, you could tell that they were feeling unsteady. And so my goal was to just come in, learn everything that I could about how things were currently, and think about a strategy for a future solution, but not necessarily come in and disrupt everything day one. So the first year and a half that I was here at Kingstone, we didn't touch the claim system really. We just left it alone. We learned about what was working, what wasn't working. We learned how it came to be, right? Even, understanding the past decisions and past emotions is really important to ensuring that your next decision is going to be the one that sticks. And so for myself and my project managers, it was about sitting down and going, all right, what is currently working, what's not? And then how do we make sure that next choice, that next move, that next system is going to not only address all of these concerns, questions, but make sure that it's a scalable future state for Kingstone. So that's kind of how we approached it. And it was tough, right? Because you want to make it work right away. You want to, it can be better, it can be good. But at the same time, there was better, and I think just more or less emotional decisions because we took our time and we really thought through, which I appreciated. So
Yeah, and it's important to note that, transformation doesn't need to go for the big,
yeah.
you know, implementation. You can actually start bits
Mm-hmm.
by bits. And you might have read actually over the August month that there was a piece of research from MIT and NANDA, which stated that 95% of AI pilots fail. So only 5% of those initiatives succeeded. I guess Kingstone is part of the 5%. So
Yeah.
when you start looking at consolidation, right? We talked about core system.
Mm-hmm.
But I think today, when we look at modernization, we also talk about the claims backbone,
Yes.
moving to the cloud, right? Everything needs to
Mm-hmm.
be in the cloud now. Everything needs to actually also have clean data. We need to be
Yeah.
data first, right?
Yeah.
So how do we keep a single source of data,
Mm-hmm.
and ensure we are AI ready? And if you had to pick one change that you made to make your adjuster happy, what was that?
I mean, that's a loaded question because we changed the whole platform. Like we literally said, again, when I joined, we were stabilizing, but we knew that wasn't our future. So when you and I saw each other in October of last year, I believe that we had either just signed our contract or we were like days away from finalizing. And so between then and now, we have changed the entire platform. We, cut ties with our last partner. We transitioned to a new platform. We did a full data migration, really focused on ensuring that there were to your point, good processes understood, good data in the right places so that we could have more automation, more potential for AI in the future. But the huge day one goal was just get to a better place and then figure out what's next. So we're on a whole new platform, which is the one big thing that makes our adjusters so happy. It makes us happy too, honestly, because from an IT perspective, it's just easier to maintain and help with and administer and things like that. But I would say that is obviously the biggest thing that we did. But that came with a lot, right? To your point, you have to focus on how to make, we've all said this before. You have to focus on how to make that one place your place, right? Your single pane of glass. How do you take your claim system and ensure that everything that's in there is data that's clean, data that's true? If your adjusters have to go outside of that system, why do they have to go outside of that system, right? What data are they not getting right away, or what data do they have to go get from a different source system and bring in? So while we were going through the process of switching platforms, of course, we had that like day one MVP of just like going live, being able to adjust claims, having some basic automation in place. But there was a whole other part of that project tab that had the sort of day two of here's all the places that the claims team goes outside of the platform, and let's figure out how to work on integrations or data flow, or figure out how to bring that information over during FNOL, right? Or during the claims life cycle where it makes sense, so that the adjusters don't have to leave the claims platform to adjust their claims. They can do it in one place. So that's what we're working on now, right? We went to production with the system. The system is amazing. Next step is taking all of the other places the adjusters go, connect them to that system, and really try to just create that one-stop shop for the adjusters to do their job, because efficiency is king right now, right? And it's why AI is getting such a movement behind it, because you're trying to find those places where you don't have to do something manually, or you don't have to do something that normally would take hours and hours and hours. You want it in seconds. So yeah, it's been really fun.
But every transformations requires allies. And I hear, as I'm listening to you, a cultural change,
Yeah.
and the adjuster love the platform. They absolutely love the platform, which I don't often hear when I talk to
Mm-hmm.
insurers. So
Yeah.
who were your earliest co-pilots,
Yeah.
co-workers, co-pilots, companions, which allowed for this to happen? And how did you earn the trust?
Yeah. So I am a big believer that like the universe gives you things when you need them. And so for me, I got a new chief claims officer at Kingstone right around the time where you could tell that IT knew that we were not going to stay on our current platform. We were definitely headed in a different direction. But we never want to be the people who like force a decision or push a decision. We are the people who want to just give you your options, talk about pros, cons, right? Like bring up risk if there's any, and then let your partners decide. And so for me, I wanted our chief claims officer to come in to assess his team, the system, without my opinions on it, and then come back to me later when we had time to consume more information, and then talk about it. And thankfully, our chief claims officer definitely came back and said, yeah, I don't want this anymore. It's very clear that, like I said, there's a lot of emotion attached to it. People just don't like it. We had an option on the table that was to either revamp or like restructure the old platform. And it was like, you know what, that's not going to be worth it. Like we have to start fresh. We have to get away from our past and move into the future. So claims, number one ally, right? They were in agreement with the decisions we all wanted to make, and really wanted to be a part of, like I said, making sure that next decision was the right decision. And I think that it's super important to make sure that your biggest stakeholder is at the table with you, but then all of the other departments still either interacted with claims systems or claims data. And so, sitting down with each of them, talking about them, talking about their needs, talking about their reporting needs, or what their previous workflows were, and potentially either recreating or enhancing them. That was a massive undertaking. When I sit here and I think about it, I don't think there's a single department we didn't talk to during this transformation or wasn't on board with the new version of what we were going to do. But yeah, claims, it just did such an amazing job with, being a part of the decision making, knowing we had to move quickly, knowing what we wanted to do, and really just being able to be at the table, make those decisions, and move with us and trust us. And it was just awesome. Honestly, one of the best implementations I've ever done. So
That's superb to hear. Having myself work in my past for core system, I've worked for companies in the predictive analytics space as well. So I know you have to look at things as components, right?
yes.
And you have to actually ensure that the whole organization come on board, because the system are still talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So to build the core claims ecosystem, right, from an architectural viewpoint, making sure to select the right vendors and the data talks to one another, there is a lot of work to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have amazing core system vendors, enterprise wide, the big
Yeah.
one we always talk about. And recently, Guidewire released their numbers and they have done very well.
Yes.
But you have on white side for me, the Guidewire, the Duck Creeks, and then you have the API-led Mosaic, right? The new
Yeah.
systems such as I would say Majesco, Snapsheet, the more modern, the newer platform. So
Yeah.
how do you decide what to buy? How do
Well,
you
first of
decide
all,
how to integrate? How do you
yeah.
lead, you know,
Yeah.
on the
So
floor, cutting edge, and help people know that, you are Kingstone, right? You
mhm.
are a fast growing business. Um, and you want to have, I would say, the Jaguar or the Ferraris
Yeah.
internally to actually, build
Yeah.
that
No,
business for the
absolutely.
future.
So there's a ton of variables that play into not only who you talk to as a vendor partner, who you demo with, and what your considerations are. And you just touched on almost every one of them. And so let's just start at the top. Number one, it's how big are we, right? How much money do we have? I can't, I'm going to be honest, we couldn't afford Guidewire. Guidewire that's for the big guys, right? I don't have that kind of budget. But that's not to say that I still don't deserve, the best. And so when you have to pay attention to the money you're spending, that is kind of number one. The next thing was really about time to production, right? We were not in a position where we had a year, 2, 3 to design a system and sit down and obsess about every single step in the process and design something that was unique to Kingstone. We had a timeline and had to hit it to get off of an older platform, to finish a data migration, and to get the claims department poised and ready to face CAT season in 2025. So we had to look at who was going to be able to move with us. We had to look at which platform was going to give us the most flexibility, like you said, right? Maybe they don't have all of the integrated bells and whistles, but if they're able to have integrations, that's a win too. And we can work with that. So we actually ended up going with Snapsheet. So love that you brought them up because they are fantastic. So, even just from the conversations with them during contract negotiations and kicking off the project, they were great. They listened and they understood what we needed to do and assured us it could get done. And it's funny because there's many people on my team who have gone through platform migrations before, like you said, core systems, that's usually a big lift and shift. And I'll be honest, every one of us was like, there's no way we're going to get this done in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, right? Snapsheet's lying. They're not. We got it done. And listen, was it a lot of work? Yeah. Did we have to put in a few late nights? Of course we did. We had a lot of other things we needed to do in the background to make this successful, but ultimately, what they sell is what they give you, which is amazing. They gave us a platform that was capable of consuming all of our claims, of letting us adjust them day one out of the box. And also, we're super open to partnerships, APIs. They were very interested in who we were working with. A lot of cases, they already had native integrations or were working on those. And then in other cases, they were like, oh, that's a new vendor for us too. Let's talk to them. it was a great partnership from the start. So yeah. So again, remembering that we had like this MVP get to production day one project, I think we went over the finish line with like 3 integrations in place, which, listen, was amazing. But every month, every quarter, every time we turn around, a new one's going into place, or a new option is coming up for, priority with claims to say, we'd like to focus on this next. Snap is still coming out with new integrations and working with other partners. So it's just kind of like, it's really great to have this like foundation where that you can build on top of it, right? Like our past system and in the past, just some systems in general, if the foundation feels shaky, you're not going to feel confident building on top of it. And I think for us, we did back then and still do feel like our foundation is very solid. So we're really excited about what we're going to do with them in the future.
Yeah, and you have touched upon something very important. Recently, I did a case study on Wacom, and it was about analyzing their digital ecosystem. And what you're talking about is finding vendors who understand what they are really, really good at, but then build an amazing ecosystem of partners around them through the API to actually ensure that they serve the customer as best as possible.
Yeah.
And you won't believe it, last week I met a startup called Kyber, and I believe they are actually integrated into Snapshot. And
Yes.
I want insurers and I want our market to start understanding that there are absolutely amazing solutions out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about having those talking to one another to accelerate the growth of
Yeah.
the carrier.
Yep. So we also partner with Kyber. So thank you for bringing that up. Because yeah, that is another, that's actually a super great example of, they were not a partner when we first joined with Snap, but they became a partner. So now we have that integration built. And that's also a really good example of like this sort of like, I'm calling it baby stepping into the AI, right? So Kyber is a communication, generation platform. So at its core function, you're taking information out of your claim system, you're putting it into your letters, into your emails, into whatever you need, and you're not doing the copy paste, you're not doing, the manual input or manual, typing of communications, which is awesome, great, right? Like again, thinking efficiencies from the adjuster's perspective, you don't have to move all that information manually; it goes over for you. But Kyber has the ability to write the communications, right, with AI, with, looking back at the claim notes and looking back at what type of claim it was and taking that information and creating communications that have the empathy that a person would have, that have the information that's required by regulatory bodies and, compliance entities. So, that is a perfect example of a partner where we said, all right, day one, we just need it to help us with communications, but the day two absolutely is that we're going to take that to the next level and we're going to start to utilize their AI features that will actually write our communications. So yeah, there's, you said earlier that a lot of these AI initiatives, like they fail, or just in general initiatives that are large and impact your core systems don't always go as expected. And I think that the biggest learning that we had probably as, definitely as an organization over the past year was to not, I don't want to run before I'm walking. And so sometimes you think AI is going to be able to fix the problem, or you think AI is going to be able to fix the process. But when you start to talk it through, or when you start to really dissect it, you actually find out it's not really going to be AI so much as it's going to be like, could we maybe tweak the system to be better for the, the people using it? Or could we potentially explore like a different way of doing this as a process? AI is going to play a huge role in current and future state at Kingstone and many, many other insurance carriers. But you still have to go back to the basics of, am I just trying to put a Band-Aid on this problem, or am I actually trying to solve it long term, right? So think about, like, for years, RPA, robotic process automation, was kind of that flavor of tech that everyone was looking for, right? I feel like AI has just firmly replaced that, which is fantastic. But that was RPA was like the take your manual tasks and turn it into a bot, right? A bot is going to do what the human does. And it's like, okay, that's great, right? Like I can take the manual work off of a human's plate, if you will. But should I do that, or should I address why the problem exists to begin with? Right. Or, why does the problem exist? And should I explore the option of doing it differently and then just not have this be a bot at all? So there is space for so much automation. It doesn't always mean it's going to be AI, just like it doesn't always mean it's going to be an RPA. But you have to just, sometimes you got to take that step back and ask why, right? Why are we doing this? And why is this important for us to address or fix with a different solution potentially, or a different vendor, right?
Yeah. And you've just mentioned, sometimes you have to incrementally fix.
Yes.
Where, sometimes incremental fix are not enough, right? So you really have to understand the problems you are trying to solve. And so when you're actually modernizing communication so that adjuster could text, use the communication channel the customer wants the most. So for you, what is the playbook for spotting, a rip and replace versus a patch and proceed type change process?
Yeah, so they both have their place for sure. So even in this current, example, like we were not going to be able to move forward with our old partnership with our old system. And so that rip and replace just had to happen from a core system perspective. So there's a lot of things to consider there. So there's obviously the time, right? So taking back to a year and a half ago when we were still deciding about whether or not to fix old system or completely replace old system, it was like, all right, what does it take to fix? We were behind in getting like patches from the vendor because we had just not updated in a really long time. And so first it was, how do we get to the latest release? How do we figure out how to build on the latest release? How do we figure out what's going to change? Then it was, how do we need to change the entire platform and, right? And then it was like, how much time do we need and all that stuff. And ultimately where it ended up was like, it was going to take about a year and a half-ish to like fix the system. And it was like, why don't we just replace it in a year and a half instead, right? So again, budget is a thing. Potential future scalable state is a thing. Knowing that your partners can meet your needs currently and in the future, definitely a thing. But there's a lot of considerations to make. If you have built your own platform, like, again, there's usually a lot of emotion attached to like that being a homegrown system, right? Something that you own and that you have, a huge amount of investment in. And I'm not saying that's the way to go. Just like I'm not saying that going out to the market is the right decision either for everyone, but you have to make those considerations of just like, can you scale? Will you be able to take what you have and move fast, right? Because that's another thing. Kingstone IT and in general has built itself on being able to move quickly, make decisions, fail fast, right? And just go in the direction that the business wants to go, learning things along the way, and then really focusing on how to make sure that we are we're planning for scalability just organically, right? So there is no one answer to that question, but I will say that, if you have a heavy coded platform, if you need a lot of resources, like literally a lot of bodies to fix things, or it takes a lot of time to fix things, I would say you're probably already behind, right? There are so many good partners and platforms out there that can do this quickly, that can show you how to do this quickly. And speed to market, speed to getting those efficiencies, those APIs, those changes to your adjusters or any of your business partners, that's going to be a really key part of success for anyone in the future.
Yeah, velocity, I think, is the name of the game right now. And so let's talk to those leaders who might be scared to go through that transformation. Yeah. Actually, Sara, what are the 3 green flags you would want them to be aware of? What are the signals they should be looking at when they decide that it might be time to migrate to the cloud and that they need to keep pace with change?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, do you do you have a partner who's asking for or is willing to engage in that space, right? Because again, if you're saying, I want to change this platform and no one else around you is saying that, that's probably an indicator that that's not really the appetite in your organization. And you need to find out why. And you need to find out why you feel that way and no one else feels that way. But I would say that, like I said, the biggest thing for me was our chief claims officer coming in, assessing the platform and the team independently of my opinions, and still arriving at that same conclusion of, we need to make a change. Right now, what that change looked like, we weren't sure yet, but it was, we definitely need to make a change. So the second you notice a willingness or the ask, that's your biggest green flag to go, or at least start opening the door to those conversations. After that, it's going to be, how, I don't want to say how quickly can you make decisions, but like that commitment from your partners that they're willing to make decisions quickly and they're willing to be different, right? So I think that it's probably my worst, like I hate hearing, well, we've always done it that way, or, well, it's always been like this, and so we've just never changed it. If you have a willingness to change on top of a person or group of people who are willing to make different decisions, like right there, I feel like that is just going to be the best start of a partnership. After that, it's going to be, how, like, it's that commitment to the change. So when I think about our implementation with Snapsheet, we had a clock. We needed to be done by, Q1 of 2025. And we didn't kick off until Q4 of 2024. So we had a real short runway. We had the holidays to contend with. And I remember sitting down with, the claims stakeholders and saying, listen, every day we're going to come to you and every day we're going to ask you to make a decision. And you don't have 2 weeks to make that decision. You have like a day, maybe two at the most. So not only do you need to give me decision makers who are empowered to make those decisions, but also you need to tell me when you don't have enough information to make a decision or when you need more out of my team to make a decision, right? And that immediate just agreement that that was how we were going to proceed, and we trusted each other to make those decisions, or we trusted each other that the information that we had was enough, that's what made us able to do what we did. Like that right there was it. So, keep an eye out for the willingness, the communication, the commitment. Like those are things that if you don't have them, it will be a struggle because you're just going to come up against roadblocks and hurdles, I think, every step of the way.
Yeah, as you are speaking, it reminds me of a conversation I was having with Bessem Ayare, who leads innovation at the group level at Ergo, which is part of the Minikri group. And he said, my best partners are the one I can call at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we can actually solve the problem together very fast.
Yes.
That means you have to have decision-making power. So
Yeah.
when you look at the stakeholder, you have to be a revolutionary SA or revolutionary change leader within your organization, happy to take some of the risk, which will help drive the growth for their business in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
AI. So let's talk about data analytics and artificial intelligence because we need to talk about that intelligence layer.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know a bit more as to how to do that well. As I mentioned, 95% of AI pilots fail, according to MIT. And just last week, HBR as well wrote about it.
Yeah.
So you built for one real-time source of the truth, right? That was your purpose.
Yes.
What new decision can your team make in minutes now that used to take days?
I would say a majority of them, right? So at its core, Snapsheet just had a lot of features and functions that became available to us that our old system didn't have. So this seems basic, but the concept of like auto assignment of claims, for instance, or policy lookup upon FNOL, those things that either didn't exist or still required manual intervention. Like as soon as we got off our old platform, like those pain points or manual interactions became obsolete. So we no longer had to have somebody sitting and watching the queue, adjusting, fields and copy pasting information. So right now, just the movement of claims through the system, right? The automated, authority limit requests or the manager approvals, like, again, they seem so basic, but if you don't have a platform where you have that as a capacity or capability, it's hard because you still have to move things around manually. We are a carrier who is in, P&C, so cat exposed areas. Our one of the biggest things that we have to consider is what if we get hit by a cat? What if we take our volume from its normal everyday, volume to 10x, 20x overnight because a storm has hit or because a cat has, landed somewhere. So that is a big thing too, is like thinking about that, like burstability and scalability. So a lot of what we're focused on is we want the adjuster to have time to adjust and, like I said, bring them all the information they need to do that in one place. Give them the triggers needed or know that automation is built in during the adjustment process, as opposed to them having to remember to do things along the way. So things like, summarization of large documents, that stuff we just got to do now. We don't have time to read a 50-page document. We don't have time to comb through a bunch of different, records. We've got to be able to take that information, throw it into an LLM and get a summary or get some high-level notes back to the adjuster to be able to make a quick decision, but still have them available for them to look back at and digest when they can. Back to the catastrophe scenario, we talked a lot about, well, what if I need to move 50 claims from one adjuster to another because, the IA rolled off, or because, that person is now going to handle this set of claims. How do we get it to where you don't need to have the adjuster go heads down for days to get themselves up to date on where the claim is? How do you take the notes and the timeline and the tasks and distill that into here's a snapshot of where the claim is at and what is the next step, right? Because that was such a big part of the time frame. Like, the time was, if you have to take on a new claim, or if an adjuster goes on PTO, like, the new person had to go look and be like, where are we at? And sometimes these claims are open for, months and years, but sometimes it's a quick hit. But either way, it's like, how do you just press a button and get a summary of the timeline and the next steps for a claim? So those little things, again, seem basic. They seem like they're not going to save a ton of time, but when you take that and you add 50 other claims behind it, or you take that and you realize that you go from 2 days to 2 minutes, that's huge. Like, yeah. So those are the things that we're aiming for getting next.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's kind of funny because last night at 3 o'clock, I was actually reading a summary report that I had actually pulled from reviewing probably 50 different reports from leading different research groups. So I was literally at 3 o'clock said, you know what, I want to read this report. So I was doing this. But as you were talking, we went just 3 seasons. When I woke up this morning, it was probably like 13 degrees Celsius here in Europe, UK. Then we had t-shirt weather when we started talking, and I just had the storm for a few moments just here in central London. So let's continue talking about AI. So AI can either be a change leader, right? It can actually, as you said, summarize and help people make better decisions faster for communication, for cues, triage, and among other things. But there are also areas where it's very hype, right? The hype AI use cases. So what would be the use case you would intentionally put aside and look at later?
So again, I think that from my perspective, it's going to be different from others because of where we sit regionally and what we do. But I would say that if you are coming into an AI initiative or coming into the solution by saying that you want to take every, new business request or quote or every claim, and you want to automate, 80% of the process, like, I'll tell you right now, you are going to be that 95% that fail, right? And it's not that you can't, it's just that, like you mentioned earlier, that incremental step into success is going to be, it's going to take a longer tail, but it's going to be worth it. Because I think that a lot of times the hype is that it can replace everyone. It can replace the decision. It can, oh, it's going to be able to adjust all your claims, or, 80. No, that's not reality. The reality is that we still have to answer to regulators and auditors. The reality is we still need to have a human connection and empathy, and need to sometimes make decisions that are better decisions for our, insureds than it is for us. And AI is not going to do that. And that's okay, right? There are definitely use cases where you're going to do some really great stuff and have that version of straight through processing you're looking for. But if you expect that you're just going to not have human adjusters and that AI can adjust your claims, you're going to find that that's not feasible right now, right? That is something that you can work towards. That is something where, like, success criteria can start in one place and end in another. But there's still a level of that either review or checking or quality assurance that a person is going to need to be there for, right? So there's not necessarily anything that I'm putting on the back burner or saying, no, we're never going to do it like that. It's more just, that sounds like a great idea. What's the first step to get us ready to think about that as a future state, right? I want to have Snapsheet tell me when there's fraud indicators. Great. Love that. We would all love that, right? Having an SIU department is a lot. But what data matters when making those decisions? What data do we look at? How do you aggregate all of that, to your point, and get it in one place? There's a lot of other problems that have to be solved before you can just declare that your system will tell you all of the fraud, indicators, or, tell you when someone is trying to, get more than they need to get. So there's a lot where I would say just put it, if you're not ready yet, put it in the backlog, right? Think about it. When I'm looking for those partners outside of Snapsheet, for instance, right? When I'm looking for those APIs, when I'm looking for an AI-led or driven vendor to do the basics of, like, the summarization and the timelines and things like that, I'm also asking what they're looking at in the industry, or what their partners are requesting, or what they've built that is really cool and maybe we'd like to try. Because I'm not the person who's going to have all the ideas. I'm just the person who's going to go out, find some stuff, bring it back, make some decisions, talk to the team, right? So it's not, I think right now the technology is evolving, and it's evolving so fast. And when you know what problem you're trying to solve, like, great, right? You're step one. But you're not, like, if your goal is to get to a completely AI run or AI driven model, I would say that it's just not, I don't know. I don't see it right now.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think it's important, the point you're making, because there is this dichotomy in the world of artificial intelligence right now, where, I teach myself to build agents, and
Mhm.
I know you still need to feed a lot of information to the AI. So it's not going to replace humans,
Yes.
not nearly enough. So we should not be scared of it, but actually we should actually see it as a co-pilot, as you said, a co-worker, someone we could delegate. And hopefully at some point we will trust it enough for it to become a teammate. But how
Mhm.
do you teach AI to amplify the adjusters, now not override them? How do you make sure that you have the right guardrail, maybe the right training within the team? How do you implement the right rituals to actually make sure that the AI augment the team,
Yeah,
replace it?
that's a great question, and something, honestly, that I think about probably a lot more than I should. But I mean, first thing that comes to mind is that no matter what the technology is, because again, there's flavors, right? Like, RPA had its moment in the sun, it still does, it's still a functional, use case. But even considering AI now, I mean, again, the technology is moving fast, it's new. There's a lot of, like, What can it do? Does it have bias? Is it going to augment or just, support my staff? And that's the biggest thing is we are still, as an industry, we are regulated, right? We have regulatory bodies who we have to answer to when we make decisions. And they don't allow us to rest on, well, it was the technology that made the decision, right? So, when we look at how to train AI or what to use it for, the biggest thing is, is it doing what we want it to do, expect it to do? And then are we continuing to check on it, like for that quality assurance of the decision it made is the decision that we would have made as an organization? Because ultimately, if we just let it go and it's in the wild and no one's checking on it and we're not changing it or adjusting it or regulating it in any way, if any decision gets made in the future and it's the wrong one, we still have to answer for that, right? We still have to adjust for that. We are never as an industry going to be able to say, well, AI decided, and so it's not really my problem or it's not really my fault. No, like we are the keepers of the technology. We are the people who train the models. So right now, like I said, large language models, doing the summaries, just adding efficiencies is really kind of like name of the game, because that's going to be the quick wins of getting the adjusters back to like making the decisions and being the empathetic people that they are. But we have said and continue to pay attention to, like, there's a future where it's going to be less about training models and more about reviewing what comes out of them for that quality assurance purpose, right? So how do you build in time now? Because you're saving time by letting AI do stuff, right? Like by letting them summarize, letting them potentially write your communications, but you're replacing that time with checking them with that quality assurance. And so then that kind of becomes the not the focus, but like it's something I keep in the back of my head where I'm like, are we just going to become QA people in the future? Like, are we just going to be the people that check the work as opposed to doing the work? Because what does that look like, right? How would that change systems and technology and time? And potentially, how do you build an AI that will check your work for you and tell you when it's wrong, right? So there's so much to it. But yeah, that's an interesting one.
It is an interesting one, and I do believe the future of work is going to change our roles. We are not going to do the job we were doing yesterday. Workforce transformation is going at full speed right now, and I do a lot of QA. So everything which comes out, I look for the citation, I actually drill down to make sure that it has not hallucinated. And just 2 days ago, I was talking with my husband, who was looking for actually fashion use cases. He has to do a major piece of work, so he was looking for fashion use cases, and I was doing the same, looking for Fortune 500 insurance use cases. And it was funny. He said, ChatGPT lied to me. I said, darling, it lies all the time.
It lies.
You
Yes,
have
exactly.
to check everything.
Yep. Yeah. And that's just it, is like it's hard because it is such an amazing technology, and it really does have just the impact already on our industry is profound. But it lies. It's not. It is going to the internet, which is a dirty place. Like, and it's not. It is not a place that is a source of truth, at least not in every way. And so, we have to make sure that we're keeping our customers secure, right? That their data is never going to be exposed. We have to make sure that whatever comes back from that model is getting a check, right? Isn't just, immediately becoming the source of truth, the Bible. Like, that's not its purpose. It's there to facilitate. It's there to, again, efficiency gains abound. But wow, just the amount of times that again, even myself, that I use it in my personal life, and I'm just like, I don't know, that doesn't seem right to me. I'm going to go do some fact checking on my own, So yeah, again, that takes me back to what I just said, which is if you have any sort of expectation that it's just going to go from 0 to 100 at your organization, I would just caution you to slow down, because no, like you are going to spend more time checking it than you did building it, if that's going to be the case.
Yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely, 100%. So, Sarah, for me, it has been an honor meeting you a year ago. And I remember as we were preparing for Connected Claims at Reuters, I have to say, and I want everybody to know, you are one of the most inspiring person I met last
Oh, thank
year.
you.
And so when I think about Kingstone, right, I can see you are surrounded by an incredible culture,
Yes.
and the organization is highly outcome driven. So I was reading your website for sure to prepare for our conversation. And I just seen that you've posted amazing profitability recently, right? Setting, 5 years ago to reach $500 million in premium. And I think it's important for the market to know that. How did technology, core system renovation, claims discipline show up in the combined ratio actually, and to drive that growth engine for Kingstone? And what
Yeah.
are the KPIs you're obsessed about?
All of them, but also simultaneously none of them, because right now, like you just said, we had a super transformative year in 2024 and 2025. Not just from a combined ratio perspective, from a culture perspective, from a systems perspective. We, as a leadership team, looked around years ago and said, if we don't change, we won't be here. And so there was a very tangible and obvious shift in how we underwrote, how we did claims adjustment, how we looked at our business and where our business was centralized and located and the markets that were good for us. And it was a labor of love to get to where we are right now. It's so nice to see all of the work done on the back ends actually showing up right in combined ratio and results, because that's not something that we take lightly, right? I also think it's not something, for me anyway, that I've experienced. I've been at carriers before Kingstone, and they didn't work. They weren't profitable. They couldn't turn the ship around, if you will. And it is really great to see that we were able to do that. But that is every person at Kingstone committed to that vision, that goal, and that future state, right? So technology obviously plays a huge role in everything that we do. We were able to, do what we did with basically the same amount of staff, with changing some core systems around, or changing what we did within those core systems. The KPIs that we're paying attention to, of course, are the expenses. Definitely just paying attention to where our money is going and who our money is going to. From an IT perspective, there's a lot of value I place in like the relationships with my partners. If I'm spending a lot of money, and I want to make sure that Kingstone's getting value for that money. That's really important to me. There is no version of, my budget where I'm not abundantly clear who is doing what, and I have my eyes on a few people who are not delivering as well as I would expect them to. It doesn't matter that I'm not Progressive or Allstate or one of the big carriers. To me, if I'm spending money with you, or I'm entrusting you with the money I'm spending, then I expect a partnership. It doesn't matter if it's $20,000 or $20 million. So there's a lot that goes into that. It also, though, has fueled that growth strategy, like you just mentioned. If we weren't profitable, we would never consider moving in a different direction unless that was going to be the thing that drove profit. So for us, it was really focusing on New York, and it was focusing on our current footprint, right sizing our book, making sure that we were making good and solid decisions, and then taking that and expanding. So, it's been years in the making. It's been super, super fun. We are aggressively pursuing some new markets, which is really exciting. And yeah, I can't wait to see what happens. I know, like the numbers and also just I know that our leadership team is being very thoughtful about these decisions, right? We're not just going because, you know, we want to steal market share or we want to, you know, like we're not being reckless with this. So it's exciting, but it's also just really great to see that like we're paying attention to where we can make an impact, not only in that geographical location, but also to, you know, ourselves and our bottom line. And yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I can hear that in your voice. So geographical expansion while
Yes.
staying New York strong. So that is amazing. And so I think it's very important to echo that to your vendor partners, to the strategic partners who are there, right? What are the system and data prerequisites you will not compromise on once you're expanding?
I think a lot of that is like, so, oh God, so many of them. Data is obviously super important, right? So when it comes to reporting, modeling, really looking at new places or even current places and making sure that you're doing all the right things. I want to focus a lot on our customer experience, our agent experience, making sure that they have everything that they need, that there's a layer of like self-service or capability that they have. And a lot of that comes down to like how we interact with them. Little things like, you know, which phone number we tell them to call or how we have them interact with their policy or claims information. So there are still opportunities in our data set to be better, right? To get more or get cleaner pieces of data that will tell us better stories. But ultimately, right now, you know, we understand our products. We understand our rates, we understand our policyholders and our claimants, because the data tells us that the decisions that we're making are the right decisions, right? So there isn't necessarily one thing where I'm just like, I won't compromise. I don't want to compromise on anything, honestly. We're building a robust warehouse of data, right? To give us the things that we need and to consider things outside of, I think, what people would normally consider. We are getting more data sources, you know, different data sources, thinking about it in a more creative way. And we have a great actuary team and product team who are really focused on that. And so, you know, I think that if anyone is looking around and the first thing that you do is question the truth or the cleanliness of your data, you got to start there, right? We don't do that. We don't question where it comes from, or we don't question how clean it is, because the focus has really been on making sure that that's solid. Now it just becomes, okay, what do we do with it after we have it, and how do we think about it or look at it when we're making our next set of decisions? So
Yeah, that's super cool. So let's
yeah.
finish our conversation on a very happy note. So let's think about your new claims ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And if that claims ecosystem had a war concern where an adjuster logs in, what would it be?
So I posed this question to a few people who helped work on the implementation extensively. And it was a mix between a like hype song and like a chill vibe, because it's a great system, right? So uh, thinking about that, thinking about how much it changed our partners and the way that they do that, you know, we were like, you know, what about Lovely Day? Or you know, it's like what best day of my life, or I don't remember. Anyway, but we landed on Welcome to the Jungle,
Yeah.
because we were like hype. It needs energy, and it's not because it's chaos or anything. It's literally just because it's just so like it's so fun. It is great to get in there, do the work, see the output of that work. And I think that that is a good song for our platform and just in general vibes.
Absolutely. So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me on Scouting for Growth. If people want to learn more about Kingstone or reach out to you, what should they do?
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. I don't go on there every day, so forgive if I don't reply for a while. But yeah, I mean, listen, we're out there. You can see our results. Check it out. I would say too to any investors out there, don't sleep on us. Our stock price right now is we are valued higher than that, and I wouldn't dismiss us at all. I think our future is bright. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. You can also just go to the website and check us out and things like that. But I don't know. Just watch out for us. We're coming, and I think you're going to see some really great things in the next few years. So
I can't wait to see those. Thank you so much for joining me on
thank you.
Wonderful discussion, and I cannot wait to see you soon.
Yes. All right.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Scouting for Growth. Please subscribe, share with friends, and leave a 5-star rating. Your rating is so valuable. I review all of them, and my team help me adapt content to meet your needs. Also, connect with me on my preferred channels. I am a B2B growth expert, so you will find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Threads, and X as well as Blue Sky. All information available below. Until next, keep scouting for growth.